And I know you've counseled a lot of guys on this. Like, what are some of the worst things, I guess, that come from, we've talked about it a lot, but sometimes you got to remind these guys the dangers that come from, taking on the responsibility of someone else's child.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically choosing to put yourself in a position of a cuckold because you're choosing to invest your time, effort, and resources into children that don't have your name, they don't have your DNA, there's no real benefit to it. I get that, they tell men today, you do what's right. Right, but they tell women, you do what's right for you, girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's two different stories. So it's very common for guys to fall for the trap of the hot single mom, right? She does all the right things when you meet her, of course, because they want to draw you in. And then you start diving down the rabbit hole of spending time with them. And then you start taking vacations with them. And I mentioned a trip down to Barbados with her and her kids. And it just blows up. You're like, you get to the point where you're like trapped somebody, you're like, what the fuck am I doing? And how did I get myself into this? And why are these kids so disrespectful? And why don't they, appreciate any things that you're doing? It's like you have responsibility to her and kids that aren't even yours, but with no authority.
Yeah.
So it's what is the upside to a guy? So it's one of the red flags that I have on, my book on the chapter on red flags and why you want to be very careful with inviting single moms in your life.
Well said.
Yeah.
What was your awakening for this whole process here?
Oh, you called in.
Tell space.
Well, it's funny, man. Yeah, he talks about the video that he did that blew up, and that was the women not to date, and that was, so I was in a relationship. I had dated my fair share of girls in like high school and college and things like that, but I came into this stuff. Like I remember watching when I was a teenager, like the VH1's The Pickup Artist Show. That was my first foray into this sort of stuff, the mystery and everything like that. I did 2 seasons. I was nuts. I was fascinated by it. So picking up girls and getting their attention was never really super, super hard, but I really struggled with the LTR game, keeping interest long term, and I became the plow horse over time. The most, I had 3 sort of major relationships in my 20s, and the one that really brought me to the content was, got together. We were together 2 years and some change. We lived in New York at the time. We did the apartment and the dog. We talked about marriage and kids' names and all that stuff. And she had a terrible, non-existent relationship with her biological father. So he had disowned her legally when she was 13 or something like that.
Oh, damn.
And he was still involved. She had 2 other siblings, and he was still involved in their lives. And they weren't that much younger than her. So she was the adult. She was the firstborn. And I remember she would tell me things like, you're never allowed to ask me about my father. You're never allowed to have an opinion on it. You just need to shut the fuck up. Like, don't talk about that stuff. Like, okay. So me still being kind of plugged in, I'm Googling or searching how to be a good boyfriend to girls with daddy issues or whatever. And I come across a video that's like 3 women to avoid dating. I'm like, oh, this guy's in a car, like bald head. Like, interesting. First thing he goes like, don't date girls with daddy issues. And I'm like, oh, right. Everything after that just takes off because it's like, this is the first time that someone had ever told me, like, you're allowed to have standards and you don't have to put yourself through bullshit for a chick.
Yeah.
And so dove down the rabbit hole, man, watched all of his stuff, consumed the content. We were still together at the time and broke up maybe a month or 2 later. And she moved out. Then February of 21, I called into his show where he was doing it with Aaron Clary, who was promoting like Book of Numbers at the time.
Well, that's my dad.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
my white dad.
Yeah.
So like you can watch that video if you type in like Rich Cooper before the train wreck. I think it's episode like 94. I mean, I've almost got it down to the minute where I call in, and I'm like, I got one night is for this chick. What the hell do I do?
Yeah.
And the biggest awakening for me is that I got off the call and I looked around. I was like, all right, I don't have a tribe of men. I don't have buddies around that I can call. I don't have guys in New York. I was in New York at the time, and it was a prison. It was all during. And that night I was like, I'm joining the community. And so I've been, in the community ever since. And my thing was, I'm going to go out there and get on dating apps. I'm going to go out there and get the experience. I'm just going to go out there and put up shots. And, we've always seen eye to eye on a lot of things as far as, the tribe aspect and masculinity. And we've always really worked well off one another. And, I got canned from a W-2 job back in May of 22 because they actually found some of the tweets and some of the stuff I was doing with Rich, and they said, oh, like, you're homophobic and transphobic and you go against our guidelines and this kind of shit. How dare you? And so I talked to Rich, and he's like, look, you got 2 options. You can basically delete and scrub the internet of everything you've ever done with me, and you can do all that. You can go back to doing the 40-hour week, whatever. And I was making decent money. I was making 120, 130, something like that. Nothing crazy.
What were you doing back then?
It was like software sales, software like account
tech
management. Yeah, it was tech. So, and everything was remote, so it was easy. And I was living in Florida, so no income tax, right? So,
nice.
And he's like, or you can just double down and tell them to go fuck themselves and like go into this thing head first, and that's what I did. So.
Nice.
so essentially, like I ditched the W-2 gig. Essentially, I work kind of with Rich and for Rich full time, and we just developed a really great, personal and business relationship over the last 3 years.
Nice. No, that's great. And sometimes you got to be able to tell your job fuck off and fire your job because you can't even. And that's what it's come to now, where like you can't even have an opinion that's pro-masculine or anything like that. It's like everything they use, the stupid buzz terms you literally just use.
Totally.
Anything that's pro-masculine is homophobic or transphobic or whatever. And it's like, no, you don't have to necessarily hate a group of people to want to go in and push your class of people, if that makes sense. But I was going to ask you this, Rich,
because I was last employed 2002.
Okay.
That's before screens, that's before social media.
Yeah.
Like, that's dating me, obviously, right? And you could have an opinion. Like, you could sit down with your friends after work, have a beer, shoot the shit, say something, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Now, you got the internet, the trails, the social media, everything, and there's always somebody out there that wants to find a way to sort of get you fired, right?
Yep.
Let me teach this guy a lesson for voicing an opinion that I don't agree with.
It was somebody on my team that went behind my back and then reported me like up the chain to HR.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened to me too with the government.
And I came back like Monday morning. We were just down in Texas. We were doing a hog hunt, and I came back Monday morning, and HR was like, "Hey, like Zoom meeting in 5 minutes. It's just you." I'm like, "Oh well, I kind of know what this is gonna be."
Yeah. And
that's it. And I was like, "Look, like, what about a package severance?" They're like, "Nah, like as soon as we get off this call, your shit's gonna shut off. Like you're done." That was it. And so it was.
Oh, they didn't even give you a chance to scrub your stuff.
They didn't even give me a chance to defend myself and say like, "Oh well, do I get a chance to explain?"
Man. You can't say shit anymore.
Yeah.
They want to silence you, right?
Yeah.
I think what it got, I retweeted a video of Alan Roberts. Shout out to Alan Roberts from MFing COO, and he was talking about, like if you're talking about shit like in front of my kids, you better be ready to like go meet the Lord or something like that.
Okay.
Whatever. And not even something that I had said either way. And somebody took that and to go, "Oh, we don't feel safe with him working here anymore," and shit like that. And they're just like, "You're gone, you're done."
Sensationalizing.
Yeah, that was it.
I mean, the term free speech isn't real anymore.
No.
That's been gone a long time. And Twitter, X, so to speak, I think it's a trap. Like I said before, it's you and other people. Whatever you tweet nowadays can be used against you in the future.
Yeah.
Look at Tate. It's like, it's a trap in itself. So, social media for you.